Okay, so now on to the main session. Two rock stars, Gerard and Michael from Laerdal, are going to come up and present. We really, again, to just echo what Karen was saying, Laerdal has always been a great support to SimGHOSTS. Very forward-thinking, and we just really, truly always appreciate the support they give. And I'm looking forward to hearing what they have to present. So, two rock stars, let them it up for them right now.
Good afternoon. Come on, Michael, you've got to join me here. James actually said he was going to do a dance routine. You can't let me down now. We were walking over and going, everyone's having lunch. The hardest time to present after is, 1:30, everyone comes in, has lunch and sits down and goes, I've got to go through a PowerPoint. So it is difficult. So good afternoon once again. I'm Gerard. I look after the engineering of Laerdal for Australia and New Zealand. And Michael Stanton is actually, it's the first time you're doing this sort of thing. He's going to join me and co-present. The reason I asked him to do this is sometimes, you know your level of expertise, but also when you're presenting on something that is not your level of expertise, it's better to have that person present. So that's why I got Michael here. So let's actually, I've got the, I think I do. Yep. I haven't told my boss that I've actually just bought this. So just to set an agenda of what we want to achieve this afternoon, this is a technical workshop, but it's hard to do a technical workshop hands-on with so many people in the group. So normally a technical workshop is 10 people. So I was trying to think about how do I do this. So we stuck a camera in front of the mannequin here, and we thought we'll try and keep it as technical as possible. So the agenda today is where we came from, very brief. I don't want to bore you to death. Alignment of platforms, system integration of software. Some of you have already been through this recently. SimPad versus SimPad Plus, networking. Well, especially networking, we're going to be talking about, and Michael, not me, Michael, we're talking about some of the challenges because, there's challenges on the vendor side, the company side, but there's also challenges on the customer side. There's also challenges within the customer side where you've got a clinical environment where they want to do X, Y, Z, but then you've got an IT environment where they're going, no, you're not doing that. So we're going to talk about that. We'll talk about Situ Simulation. A lot of you have heard that there's a big shift towards it. Yes, you have sim centers, but there's a move towards in situ becoming more and more popular as we go on. We're going to talk about the technical workshops, what we want to do as a company moving forward. So that's the agenda for this afternoon. So manufacturing. So I know Miffy Foster, for example. Some of you have got, you also, Steve. We've had multiple adult platforms of mannequins, and I've been with Laerdal for 10 years as an engineer, and when I started, the portfolio didn't look nothing like this. So over the years, we've developed different portfolios and different mannequins, and all of a sudden, we found ourselves in a situation where you had 7 adult platforms. So 7 adult platforms with 7 different pieces of software. So you can see the challenges associated with that. A simple one, to give you an example, and Michael will expand on this, is Windows. Windows has changed how many times in the last couple of years? No one remembers, but you probably start to have to count. We standardizing our adult portfolio. What that means, and I'll just go to the next point as well, and the third point, standardizing generic components and consumables. Less parts for customers to hold in inventory. What does this mean for both sides? So if you look at an adult mannequin, we have multiple different platforms. What we're doing is putting everything into one chassis. So most of you, I wouldn't say most of you, a lot of you have SimMan 3G, SimMan Essential, Essential Bleeding, etc. So if you can imagine your ALS simulator now being built into a SimMan 3G chassis and sharing most of those parts. For those of you who have multiple mannequins, you end up having to put on your shelves different sets of lungs, and we talked about this in our workshop yesterday. Different sets of lungs, different sets of skins, and all the different parts that you need to keep for the multiple adult mannequins. What we're trying to do is streamline that so that that way your inventory on your shelf is less because you got a lot of the mannequins sharing the similar consumables and parts. Does that make sense? Okay, so from a cost perspective, that's going to be less cost effective for you, right, or more? You can weigh it up. In situ simulation is becoming more prevalent. I see that everywhere I go, and I do travel a lot in both countries. So the requirement for simulators to be tetherless and have self-contained features. So we will talk about this a little bit further later, where there's a point in where tetherless and having all the inbuilt features and making it easy to, that's more from a portability perspective and a setup perspective. And we'll talk about, in a clinical environment, some of the complications there. Measurable data and feedback. That seems to be a big shift. Like going back when I started with Laerdal, our mannequins, you did CPR, and a lot of you have mannequins that have measurable feedback. A lot of them don't have measurable feedback. So you could do a whole semester of a whole lot of students going through CPR, for example, but you really didn't have, it was someone signing off that person on a visually looking at it and going, yep, he looks right, he's doing CPR, right, yep. And it's all good, and you tick them off, and you have your paperwork, and you've got it filled out. So we're trying to implement measurable data and measurable feedback from our simulators as part of a logging method. And a lot of you are familiar with the debrief log, right? Thank you. So with measurable data being implemented into our simulators, we're trying to move with the times of where everyone's heading. You know, a lot of times when you want to be accredited, you've got to have proof of concept. And proof of concept comes from having the technology available and being able to use that technology and log that technology and have proof of that you did X, Y, Z. And a student who did CPR, for example, passed at 80% at the end of that. Just a figure. We're trying to put, you know, features like ultrasound intraiosis. If I pronounce that wrong, forgive me, I'm not really clinical. But those features are becoming more prominent in our mannequins because with the times we have to move with it, so we're heading down that direction. Michael, all yours.
Thanks, Gerard. So I see a lot of familiar faces here and even more familiar names. So those of you who I haven't met but have spoken to on the phone, nice to meet you. So Michael Stanton, I answer the phone when you ring 1800 331 565. Michael's my best customer. Laerdal, just a little bit about my background. I don't have a clinical or a medical background. My background's in IT. So Laerdal hired me about 4 years ago to troubleshoot over the phone. One of the skills I guess you pick up when you're doing IT is the ability to troubleshoot and help people over the phone. Sometimes, usually without seeing what it is they're actually seeing. So system integration, what I want to talk about here is why we've moved away from different platforms. We used to have 7 different platforms. So there was SimMum, SimBaby, SimNewbie, SimJunior, SimMan Classic, SimMan 3G, ALS. I think that's it. And the difficulties with that was all this bug fixing and enhancements and what have you. If there was a bug in one platform, quite often it was replicated across all platforms, so it was very difficult to maintain the code. Licensing was an issue too, because if you chose to have more than one of those platforms on the same PC, often the license manager would conflict and you would end up with unlicensed products. In some cases, SimNewbie wasn't licensed, but the rest of them were. And we also had situations where some applications could co-reside on the same PC. For example, SimMan 3G and I think SimMum were okay on the same PC, but SimJunior and SimALS wouldn't work together, and you would end up with all sorts of issues, having to reinstall sometimes even the operating system. So on top of that, there was Windows. Gerard touched on Windows before. So when I first got into the IT industry, which was 26 years ago, there was Windows 2, which wasn't a very stable platform. There was usually DOS. Most people use DOS and Lotus 1, 2, 3 and WordPerfect and all that sort of stuff. Then they came out with Windows 3, which was a disaster. Then they upgraded to Windows 3.1. They went on and on and on. Windows XP came in, and incidentally, SimMan Classic was written for Windows XP, and Microsoft dropped support for Windows XP. I think it was in 2014, early 2014. So there's another reason why we had to update. Windows XP became Windows Vista, which was another disaster. Windows Vista became Windows 7, which was very stable, still in use. Windows 7 became Windows 8, which was another disaster, and now we're running at Windows 10. So you can see why we've had to continually update and then move away from these different platforms. And of course, I mentioned this before, where we had one laptop per mannequin. Ideally, that's what you would have. So if you had 7 mannequins, you could have up to 7 laptops. Not a good situation to be in. And so that makes it all very, very expensive. So Leap, we have one laptop for all mannequins. Now, obviously, you can't run more than one mannequin at a time with the one laptop. But if you've got multiple mannequins, but you only ever intend on running one mannequin at a time, then one laptop's all you really need. And feel free to interrupt me too. If you've got a question or you want to start a discussion, an issue you've got, please feel free to interrupt me. So the customer efficiencies that Leap brings is obviously, first of all, training. You only need to get trained in one platform. You ask for Leap training, you get your Leap training. It doesn't matter what mannequin you've got, you can run that mannequin from the laptop. Patient monitor setup. So the reason we put that there is because most of you are probably familiar now with patient monitor profiles. Again, you can easily manage your patient monitor profiles from one PC rather than multiple PCs. Development efficiencies, well, we talked about bug fixes before. Incidentally, I should also say that the legacy software is continually, will be maintained for another 7 years, is it? Or another 5 years? Another 5 years. But it'll only be maintained in terms of bug fixes, so no more enhancements. If somebody is lucky enough or unlucky enough to find a bug in the software and it's reported and found to be a bug, it'll be resolved. But apart from that, there won't be any more updates to the software. Windows updates and enhancements are also development efficiencies as well. So we've got some enhancements such as SonoSim, which is an ultrasound simulator. That's all going to be supported in Leap. Won't be supported in the legacy software. We've got ShockLink, which I'll get Gerard to talk a little bit about a bit later on, but that's going to be supported in Leap as well. Regular software updates. These developers tell us that they're going to be releasing software updates about every 6 months. The most recent release was version 6.1, and it was released about 3 days ago. The most previous before that was version 5.4, which was back in February. Now, these are major releases, okay? Occasionally, if the need arises, they'll release software patches in between those times, but that's only on an as-needed basis. And unfortunately, they did need to do that very recently. I think back in May, there was some software patches. Usually what happens with software patches, and this is common throughout the IT industry, a major release will include all the previous patches up to that point as well. So if you're using 6.1, any patches released before that, but after February, will be included in it, okay? They also decided to move with the time. So those of you who haven't seen Leap, has anybody here not seen Leap before or seen the home page? Okay, so those of you who haven't seen Leap, Leap doesn't have little tiny icons all over the place. It has a home page and it has big tiles, which is very familiar to those of you familiar with Windows 8 or Windows 10. It has the big tiles. It's touchscreen ready, so you can scroll across it using touchscreen gestures. You can tap on them, and of course the interface to drive the mannequin is also touchscreen ready as well. So this is a diagram I put together for our territory managers. Our territory managers are great people, but technologically, yeah, they sort of struggle from time to time, don't they, Julie? So, So I put this diagram together just to sort of help them out. And look, I've got these readily available. If you want copies of this, I've got no problem giving them out. But what this shows is, this actually shows SimMan 3G and a complex setup. So what a complex setup is, it's when you've got SimMan 3G, you've got it connected to a recording system of ours, SimView, and you want to stream it into your network. Okay? So you might want to stream it for an observation room. For example, this would be a great observation room. You've got a simulation running upstairs, and you've got some observers down here. they're watching in real time what's happening. It can also be used to delay, to broadcast it at a later date as well, because the SimView server will store what it is you've recorded. So there's the server there. In a complex setup, you'd have a switch which has cameras connected to it. Technically speaking, you can have up to 255 cameras plugged into the server, but only a maximum of 4 can be used at any one point in time. This switch here has the instructor PC and, just the instructor PC connected to it, and of course you have the mannequin. Now, what I'm going to talk about next could be a little bit confusing, so please stop me if I'm confusing you, okay? We're going to talk about software versions. So if you're running 6.1 Elite, which is the most recent one released 3 or 4 days ago, you must have that same version running on the patient monitor. Sometimes people go ahead and update the instructor PC, forget about the patient monitor, and they run into problems. Assuming that you have that, you must also do a mannequin update. Now this guy's SimMan 3G. He's the most complex mannequin we have, and he has 6 or 7 boards inside him that have their own software on them. So they must be updated too, and you'll actually get warning messages. And in fact, this guy won't allow you to continue unless you've performed a mannequin update. We can talk you through that over the phone. It's not difficult. The only thing you need is a Cat5 cable, a standard network cable, okay? But it must be done. If you're using a lower fidelity mannequin, there still might be some mannequin updates required. Again, give us a call, please, if you run into that situation. And the other thing you need is the latest version of the SimView server as well. Now, at the moment, the version numbers aren't the same. I believe later on down the track that they will all match up. Okay, so SimView server is still at 5.2. The important thing there is that number, those last 4 digits there. That's the version number that we're running at now. Again, released back in June, early June, I think. So that's a complex SimMan 3G setup with SimView. The next slide is what we call an easy or a basic setup. It's not SimMan 3G, it's, I think that mannequin is just a resusci-M. The important thing there is the SimPad. So we've got the SimView server here. We have a switch there connecting all the cameras. Again, maximum 255 cameras. We have another switch that's used to connect to the patient monitor and the link box. And the SimPad is Wi-Fi to the link box. SimPad has its own version of software. For those of you interested, and I'll talk a little bit more about SimPads coming up, but SimPad is a Linux device. Any of you tech heads out there, it runs Linux. Currently now, SimPad Plus, which has just been formally announced in the last month or so, has just been updated to version 6.1. Beg your pardon? So the question was, do the SimPads have to be updated as well? They run a different version of the software. Again, I'll talk about that in a minute, but the short answer to your question is no, they don't have to be. But if you update your SimPad Plus, if you update your SimPad Plus, you must also update your Linkbox Plus. Uses the same software as each other, but different to SimPads. Am I confusing anybody yet? Yeah, no, maybe. Same as before, if you update, you must also update the patient monitor software and also the SimView software as well. Just let that sink in for a minute. Okay. Somebody asked me before too, I think it might have been Trevor Snow actually. Somebody said, can a USB camera be used in that? Yes, you can. You can use up to one USB camera, but it must be connected directly to the server. It can't go through the switch because a USB camera is not networkable. It's USB only. So, this camera here that we've got here, that's connected to the server, which is a laptop, by a 5-metre cable. I don't know how many 5-metre cables you can daisy chain in one go. I don't know. Have a go, let me know, please, because I'd like to know. So the question was, do they have to be Logitech cameras? Yes. With SimView Mobile, you get the cameras with it. With SimView proper, I assume as long as you've got the drivers. Yeah. Yeah, but you'd want a high-definition camera. Like the ones that come with SimView Mobile are high-definition cameras. So you'd want high definition to give you that clarity of picture as well. So SimPad. So I briefly touched on SimPads before. So it was introduced to replace the Vital Sim. Those of you who have been in simulation long enough will know that a Vital Sim is the sort of the old TV remote control style control. Problems with them was that they drifted. So they were a radio device, but the frequencies drifted from time to time, and you had to resync them. SimPads were just sort of brought in to modernise, I guess, that sort of remote style connection to the mannequin. They were, however, a single band Wi-Fi, so they only had one frequency of Wi-Fi, and I'll get into that in a minute, what that means. They had issues with the micro SD card. So a micro SD card is just a small chip. It's about 1 centimetre by 1 centimetre. It's a standard sort of thing you find in tablet computers, mobile phones and that sort of thing. There was a problem with the holder inside that, and that caused software corruption. Anybody here got SimPads? Anybody here got SimPads with the red light issue? Wow. That's surprising. I think we've sold about 2,500 SimPads in Australia, and I'd say probably about 8 or 9% of those came back to me with red light issues. Now, it's an easy fix. It just means reflashing the micro SD card, but it's a nuisance if you're at Mount Isa or something like that and you've got to send it down to Melbourne. So there was an issue with that, and of course, probably a lot of you have had issues with Wi-Fi and stability with those things. Now, unfortunately, how can I put this? The Wi-Fi issue, it is what it is. You've got a small device that's about this big, right, your link box. They traded, I guess, Wi-Fi stability for size, because anything bigger will give you probably a better signal strength, but it becomes inconvenient. So what they did was, so the SimPad is now 4 years old, and so what they've done is they've brought along the SimPad Plus, and we'll get down to this point here in a minute. It's got a new dual-core processor, so it's much faster. It's faster to boot up, faster to close down, responds much better to touch. Longer battery life. Battery is a lithium-ion battery, but it's a different battery to the SimPad, so it's not interchangeable. Connectivity, this is probably the interesting thing here. So Wi-Fi is divided into two bandwidths, two frequency ranges, 2.4 gigahertz, and 2.4 gigahertz has about 11 channels, right? And it's also, the SimPad Plus has 5 gigahertz. It has, 5 gigahertz is about 54 channels. So if you're having issues with one channel range on your SimPad Plus, you can change it to the other channel range and hopefully get a much stable connection. You can't do that with the SimPads. And it also incorporates Bluetooth, and the Bluetooth is specifically for Premiere. Has anybody seen Premiere here down? So that's specifically for Bluetooth. And it also incorporates a faster USB connection. A SimPad proper or SimPad Classic had USB 1. Excuse me. The SimPad Plus has USB 2, so data transfer rates between your computer and your SimPad are much faster. It has no micro SD card, thus eliminating the problem that we had before. Instead, it has an internal SSD. So SSD stands for solid state drive. You find them these days a lot in Ultrabook. So your MacBook Air has an SSD. Many of the HP ultralight notebooks have SSDs in them because they're much faster, they're much lighter, and they don't use as much power. And as I said before, this sort of answers your question, Miffy. The SimPad and SimPad Plus software are not compatible with each other. So if you've got SimPad software and you attempt to put it on your SimPad Plus, it will upload because it's just simply a file, but it won't install. It just won't install. You won't get error messages. It just won't do anything, and vice versa. So just a bit of a comparison table. So I said before, the operating system that runs these devices is Linux. So in more detail, it's actually the Ubuntu distribution of Linux. Now, I don't know too much about it. It is effectively a handheld computer, but it's a heavily customised handheld computer. You know, you can't play games on it. You can't read your email. You can't go to theage.com or anything like that. The displays are the same, and that's about the only similarities between the two. So the processor on this is a single core. On the SimPad Plus, it's a dual core. So that effectively means it can do things twice as fast. I mentioned before the storage. The boot up time is less than half. The shutdown time's even less again. The Wi-Fi, as I mentioned before, you've got two bandwidths now, 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. The act as host. I don't know if you actually use this, but it's an option where if you've got no other sort of Wi-Fi router or anything like that, the SimPad Plus can do that for you. USB is faster, and licensing, which I won't get into a great deal of detail here, but licensing is something you need to be aware of if you are purchasing a SimPad Plus. So networking. So this is probably becoming the biggest single issue that we face now with our simulators, because everybody wants to network them. Everybody wants to plug it into their corporate network. Everybody wants to stream from their corporate network to either remote PCs or even just other observation room PCs. So the challenges we face with networking. So Wi-Fi density and stability. So what we mean by Wi-Fi density is the amount of utilisation of the Wi-Fi spectrum in a given organisation. Now, if anybody's got a mobile phone, there's a gazillion different types of Wi-Fi analysers you can put on your mobile phone. Go downstairs into the foyer and turn it on. Now, when Gerard and I arrived here on Tuesday afternoon to set up our SimMan ALS, we couldn't connect it. The SimPad and the mannequin just simply wouldn't see each other. I did a quick look on the SimPad. The SimPad has a very basic, you can see how many Wi-Fi networks are in the area, and I think we saw about 12 or 15 or something like that. And that's just sort of getting up just a little bit too high. I've had some customers say, oh, there's about 30. That's just not going to work. And it's something you need to be aware of, because there is no fix. The only fix is to cable it up. Yes, we sell it as a Wi-Fi device because it's convenient, and in most situations it will work. But if you're in a really heavily utilised environment, it's not going to work, and the only option you've got is to cable it up. Okay? And so, of course, density, the more dense your utilisation is, the less stable your environment's going to be. Okay? Wi-Fi blockers. A lot of universities use these. I don't know what happens here at ACU, but a Wi-Fi blocker is a security device employed by IT department to block unauthorised Wi-Fi networks. In some cases, what they do is they don't actually block them, they just report them back to an IT administrator, and that person has the choice then of allowing that Wi-Fi network to continue or blocking it. It's basically to stop, it's a security device. So if you're having sort of issues, and the way we found this really was because some customers were ringing us and telling us it happens every 10 minutes. We can turn it on and we can set our clock to it. The 10 minutes later after we turn it on, the Wi-Fi network drops out. And so that was an indication that there's something else at play here. We got in contact with their local IT group, and sure enough, they had their Wi-Fi blockers set to block networks every 10 minutes. Some places do it at random, so it can be every 1 minute one day and then 5 minutes the next day. Again, there's not much we can do about it. It's something you've got to approach your IT department. If you think you've got one, you need to approach them. And my background in IT, I know that departments can be unfriendly and not very cooperative. I can't help you with that, I'm afraid. Other IT departments can be very helpful, so you've just got to approach them. Again, we can help out there. If you want us to talk turkey with your IT departments, happy to do that, because they might start asking you questions that you don't know how to answer. So that's what I'm happy to help you with. The other type of Wi-Fi blockers is, and we've seen this once in Australia, Fiona Stanley Hospital have employed a Wi-Fi blocker that stops ad hoc networks. So an ad hoc network is a type of network between a SimPad and its link box. Okay, it's not the type of network that you use your PC to connect to the wider network. That's an enterprise network. Okay, so an ad hoc network is, as the name suggests, it's sort of like a very simple, very basic type of network. And so in that situation, that particular hospital sort of didn't really give us much choice. They had to wire it up. There's no way around it. So just something you need to be aware of. Networking to customer networks. We get asked this question a lot. And some people who were in the session yesterday may have heard this answer, so I apologise if you've heard this before. The short answer to that question is yes, you can incorporate SimPads and link boxes and SimMan 3G and all your mannequins to your corporate network. The long answer to that question is that we will help you where we can, but it really is a case of you having to approach your IT department again, possibly going cap in hand and asking them to pretty please put their stuff onto their network. And it would be a fair amount of work for them to do. So again, we can help where we can. We can give them the information they may need, but it's really a fair amount of work. In some cases, they've actually got to set up separate infrastructure on their network that they have to manage, and they may just don't have the resources or manpower to manage this. So it really is a situation where you've got to get on friendly terms with your IT department. Laerdal have told, the developers have told me in the past that they may in future write what they call a white paper on this, but at this stage it's not forthcoming and there's no ETA on that, so don't hold your breath for it. IT group policies. So another thing is, if you do manage to put your servers on your corporate network, you have to make sure, and again, corporate need help, you have to make sure that your server goes into a situation where it's not subject to a group policy. So a group policy is a policy that IT administrators use to apply to their computers to stop people tinkering with computers. Now, in some certain cases, I've seen virtually no group policies whatsoever, so people can do whatever they want. Facebook, install programs, and in some cases install viruses. And in other cases, I've seen group policies so tight that the only thing a user can do is run programs. They can't add printers, they can't put a USB stick in the drive, they can't change their colours, can't do anything. Currently, there's around about 3,500 to 4,000 different types of group policies that can be applied on a computer. And so we can't possibly know what group policy your organisation may have applied. So if your computer is going on to the corporate network, you have to be aware of that. Network bandwidth. So that's network bandwidth is just a term that describes how much data transfer rate you've got in your network. So if you've got a lot of video, particularly with recording, you may have to be wary of that. Okay. Antivirus and firewall rules. Our equipment by default doesn't come with any antivirus software on there, and it doesn't come with any firewall rules on there. If your department has group policies, they may apply some of that. Just something to be aware of again. And Wi-Fi versus LAN. So Wi-Fi is really convenient. You know, I can talk, this microphone's Wi-Fi, for example, but it's not always stable. It's dropped out a couple of times on me already. If it was cable, it'd probably be good. So computer Wi-Fi versus LAN, which is the cable, you get that same sort of trade-off, convenience versus stability. And over to Gerard.
Thanks, Michael. You can see why I got Michael to actually talk about networking. He could talk for about 3 days on that. Well, he actually loves it, and that's what he does. It's his expertise. Just quickly, I want to talk about, you know, when I joined Laerdal 10 years ago, I came into the phase where HWA grants were going to come, and all these huge, big, some people call them ivory towers, sim centers got built. But now we notice in situ simulation seems to be, everywhere I go, I seem to be working more with in situ simulation rather than ivory towers. I think there's benefits of having both, and we can talk about that for 3 days as well. I won't make Michael do that. So clinical environments, so you can see where our products are going, and this is not a sales pitch, but we are creating systems that, I just want to touch on that, where we want to be able to, for example, a SimU Mobile is a portable recording system. You put it on your back and you have a three-dimensional view with 3 cameras. So you can do a recording of a simulation in a ward or in a basement or wherever you want, or outside on the ground, and then bring that back and play that in your simulation center. Does that make sense? So talking about HWA grants, I also saw the phase of where a lot of people brought a lot of product. You know, I don't know how many people bought 3Gs where they bought a 3G, and I don't mean this in a rude manner, but they bought a 3G because they had HWA grants and they had to use funding, and they had to make sure they spent that funding, or else they lost that funding. And everybody, I've got a few nodding of heads there. So what happened is Laerdal put a lot of product out there, but, you know, and I'm sure you'll share with me, we sold you a 3G, we did your 1 day of installation by an engineer, and then an educator came out and gave you 2 days of education where it said thank you, and that was the end of it. Everyone agree? So the company has looked at this now and said, hang on a minute, we've put a lot of plastic simulators out there, and we look at the way you use our simulators, and we look at the capacity it's used at. And I know there's a number of institutions, and I'm not going to name them, but where you use a 3G and you really might as well have, you've got $100,000 SimMan 3G, and you might as well have a megacode Kali on the table, which is about 20,000. I just look at that. And so what we've done as a company is we've sold the product, but not looked at a long-term solution of how we package a program and help you get the maximum out of that simulator that you put, or your investment. Okay? So what we did, for example, we talked about simulation. We've got clinical support, but we also need, I hear the word all, from yesterday and today, technical support, technical expertise, making you more comfortable to be able to use that simulator. If things go wrong, 80 to 90% of the calls, and I'm sure, Michael, you'll back me up, where the solution is right in front of you and you are actually have the capability of fixing it yourself. Surprisingly, it doesn't happen. An engineer goes out and you pay twice as much, and quite often, the turnaround time is actually limited when you want to try and get someone out, especially for those remote regions. So we're starting to run courses, and we did one at, where's Patria? Hey, there you are. We ran a course at Sippy Downs where we did a 2-day intensive course on SimMan 3G, for example, and we had a group of 18 people, I think it was. On day one, they had a limited knowledge. On the second day, we spent 4 hours of troubleshooting. The start of the troubleshooting, they were taking about 25 minutes to find a basic fault. At 4:30, 5 o'clock that evening, they were taking 5 minutes to find a hard fault and resolve it. And so our focus was, we asked those people, how did they feel at the end of that course? And they went, now I feel more comfortable using the simulator. I'm more confident. So we're trying to empower people to be more self-supportive rather than relying on us. I mean, we're always there at the end of the line, but ultimately, if you can solve it yourself at 80% of the time, I think that's a winner. So we want to run more of those. We want to do more courses where it's 90% hands-on and practical, and most of it's going to be able to empower people in sim centers, especially the sim techs, to be able to do most of the work themselves and be able to resolve the issues themselves. Clinically, we're looking at, a lot of people go, oh, you're just so technical focused. I said, no, we have a whole clinical team who also can come and do the clinical support. And I'll talk about that in the next slide just briefly. So this is a term the CEO of our company put up, and I've actually, sometimes certain things are said and you go, that makes sense. We got a lot of these in Australia, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, but we have so many centers where you've got so much potential, but we have not made the effort to help you. And so what our plan as a company is, and where we want to focus our business is, look at solution-based programs. For example, I know Tina Holmes is not here, but I asked her permission to talk about this, where she has got one of our people working with her to help her. She knows what a curriculum is, but she's got Tracy Beercroft, who's going to be spending a fair bit of time with her, helping her build scenarios to meet her needs and to meet her curriculum so that she can have something at the end of that. So structured training over a period of time. We don't sell our simulators. We don't want to sell our simulators and go, here you go, you get 1 day of install, 2 days of training. We're working with a program with the Army, for example, on a 5-year plan, how we can support them. So it's about long-term solutions, not just short-term solutions. I won't steal that last sentence that came from Julie. Confidence promotes consistency, and I think that says it itself. The more confident you are with using your simulators, the more empowered and easy things get. So with question time, I should unveil this before, but I thought I'll leave it to the last. So this is only a 2-minute spill here, where with the alignment of platforms, the way we're building our simulators, we made things so complex. With 3G, we put so many features into 3G, most people don't even use them. How many of you use 3G's right drug RFID arm? Okay, stop nodding your heads, okay, that makes sense. It's 20% of the audience use it. So there was a race, and I was involved with that race, where everyone, and not just us as companies, we went, no, we're going to make the most sophisticated mannequin. But we really failed in, we didn't really look at how many people are actually going to use that feature. So we made them so complicated that people like who with less engineering background were unable to fix it, because for example, if a 3G has a fluid issue, it's about 5 hours for an engineer just to take that fluid compartment out. So you can see with our new mannequin, for example, the ALS, and I know not all of you have got it. Everything is modular. Everything in this mannequin is modular. So you've gone from 4 hours. To take this apart, I'm not joking, it's about 20 minutes. Can you see the difference? So we're trying to design our equipment so that it can be modular and easy to be fixed. So we're reducing our engineering times, we're reducing the costs, but we're also making it more efficient for you to use. The less sophistication sometimes is more, because the mannequin's downtime is not always, it's not always broken. So with that, I'd like to end the session from our perspective, but I'll open the floor probably for the next 5 or 10 minutes. I don't want to go over time, where if we are happy to take any questions, go ahead. Did you want this, or?
It's all well and good to be designing new stuff, and that all sounds great. And
Yep.
you probably agree that in hindsight, why weren't we doing it 2 years ago? But nonetheless, that's good.
Totally agree with you.
What do we do? We've all got an army of all of the old stuff.
Okay, I'm happy to share that. I can, let's say what we've done so far. For example, SimMan Classic. We supported SimMan Classic 10 years beyond what we needed to support him. With all our current products, like a lot of you have got ALS simulators out there, right? And you all must be going, oh, hang on a minute, there's a new SimMan ALS out. Yes, we made a new SimMan ALS, and we're aligning him with, as I talked about, the alignment of platforms. But we're not going to stop supporting the ALS simulator. We will support it from a legal perspective beyond what its legal support life is. For those of you who are not aware of it, legally when a company manufactures, whether it's medical or any other product, the legal requirement is 5 years from the last date of manufacture. That's the legal requirement. Well, I don't know any company who just got 5 years, that's it, bye. We will not be dropping the support of your ALS simulators, because I've had a number of people already approach us and go, I've got an ALS which I bought last year. No, there'll be still spare parts. There's still some spare parts for SimMan Classic, which is 20 years old. So there's no reason why we would actually stop that. That would be very unfair. Thanks, Trevor. Give me an easy one.
The institution I moved from was on XP computers. That's old, but that's what we had. And I used to always write my scenarios on my personal computer and move them across with a flash drive onto the Classic or the 3G or whatever. The institute I'm now in is all on Windows 7, but they are going to migrate to Windows 10 or 11 or whatever it is in the next year or two. So can we still use the personal computers that might be on a different platform? Because if they're going to be Windows 11 or 12 or something, and we bought SimMans that were built when there was a Windows 7 platform around,
I can see what you're talking about. That is a huge challenge, and I know Michael touched on it. For example, if you buy a computer today and it's got Windows 10 on it, or just a couple of months ago, Windows 8 came out, and 3 months later we went to go and buy some computers and they were Windows 8.2. So to answer your question, most of us, if you look at the Leap world, if you build a scenario in whatever laptop you build it in, it'll convert it. We've added, how many of you have used Leap? So there is a scenario conversion tool. So that should actually convert your scenario. Now, that is my guess. So if I've got that wrong, I will come back to you. But I'm pretty confident that I know a number of people who had scenarios that they had pre-written in what we call the legacy world. When they moved into Leap world, they actually used a scenario converter within Leap to actually convert the scenario. So it was irrelevant whether it was built on a 7 or a 8.1 platform. Any more questions?
Yeah, how would you go about the possibility of organising like a 2-day
Okay, that our sales reps are actually equipped to answer that question, but we, as I said, we have a huge focus on education, and the focus is not just about technical and clinical. So you'd approach your sales staff and they will look at what you got, because I get people go, I want training for 2 days. I'll go, what have you got? Oh, I've got mini ands and nursing ands. You don't need 2 days of training. You need half a day of me. I've got a 3G, I've got a Sim baby, I've got a Sim newbie. I can only pay for 1 day. I can't teach you 3 sophisticated mannequins how to maintain it in 1 day. So what happens is when you approach the sales team, I get involved, or Michael will get involved, and what we will do is go, okay, give us the inventory of what you got, and then I need to be very careful here. For example, if you got 3G, everybody familiar about RF technology, right? So legally, we can only train you, if you've got an engineer there, we can train the engineer because he's got an electrical background to what we call manufacturer's level. But if you've got a person who does have a non-electrical background, where CP Downs, we did a lot of training, we weren't allowed to open the right arm. Let me explain why. Having an engineering background, legally, I know that arm can kill me. When I look at the circuit, I go, oh my God, that's RF and that's got some serious current there. Now, I have a non-clinical person and I train you. Let's pick on Steve. You don't have electrical, hope you don't, right? Okay, so I trained Steve. Oh no, Steve, you can open this arm. You can change the filter on this. Steve opens the arm up and he electrocutes, and an RF will give you a shock that you really don't want to know about. So Steve gets a serious electrical burn. Worst case, he could kill himself, and that thing can kill you. Legally, the company's liable because I've trained Steve without questioning Steve's electrical background. It's like you going to ICU, just treat a patient there. I can't treat a patient. I don't have the clinical skill set. So from an engineering too, we have a limitation where we will have dialogue with you and go, we can train you up to this level. There's a number of institutions who have actually paid for training where they've got their own biomeds or someone with engineering backgrounds, and we do factory level training, and there's some in this room that I've done training with at factory level. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? So we work out what you got, and then we work out a time frame of how much it'll cost and how long it'll take. Okay. Yep. Absolutely. We could meet outside of this and I'll give you more detail, and we can probably get that detail on our website if we have to. I'm not sure. We'll have to look into how we do this. We might do an email blast for people who are interested in that. Probably the best way is probably approach us. Currently, the way we're moving with the alignment of platforms, a lot of people don't want to use the RFID arm, but you got 3G trauma, which has got just an arm that you can cannulate with the cables, the leads coming out of it or the tubes coming out of it. Is that what you're looking at? Yep. Yes, you can do that. Yep. So if you approach either Michael or me, we can tell you how to do that. It's very simple. No, Michael, no questions from you. We talk to you too much. So Michael he builds scenarios and he uses the RFID tags. Okay, so. Yes, you can, but now No, manually, yes you can, but you need to know how to do it, and there's a specific way, and that is not my level of expertise, so that is something, we don't have Laura Vesey here, but we will refer you to an educator. It's not, I don't want to answer a question I used to be familiar with it, but I'm a bit rusty in there. Yeah. 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 No, it is possible, but there's a way of doing it, and that's why we have educational specialists, I guess. Thank you. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, so and that's a very good point with the convulsions in the right and left arm. Well, you'll only have it in the left arm then, so if you compromise, I suppose, a particular set of behavior, so you will take that away. Okay, that's it. Yes. Say that again. With the ped, the question was with the pediatric mannequins, do we have any future enhancements of where you have reactive eyes just like the 3G? I don't know that. But look, you know what? Meet me after this and I'll take your details down and I'll follow it up. I don't know. Sometimes we're not aware of what's in the pipeline, you know what I mean? So I really cannot answer that question. But a good one, though. He said, I'll pay him later. I think that's about it. Well, thank you so much for attending this session. I'm sure we'll enjoy the rest of the time. Thank you.